Okay, this video is going to show you how to take the tension out of a torsion spring for Qmotion shades. They have two different springs. They have a left spring and a right spring. They happen to call their left spring a reverse torsion spring. That's when the motor's on the right. And their standard torsion spring is just a standard spring. It's got the idle head on the right, and then the spring goes back this way. So if you're take the spring out of the roller shade, of course. But each shade has a pre-wind, typically, that sets tension in the shade to offset the counterbalance of the weight of the shade. And the pre-winds are noted by this yellow stripe, right? Now this shade doesn't have, or this spring, excuse me, doesn't have any pre-winds in it because that yellow stripe is straight in one piece. This spring, on the other hand, you'll notice that you can see that the yellow line is coiled around the spring, and so this has several pre-winds in it, and the way you count them is basically by starting from the yellow line, which if you look at the head of the spring, here's the main line here, so it's actually rotated a halfway around. So if you count from here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, looks like probably 6.5 pre-winds on this spring, so it's pretty tight. So this is a standard spring, meaning that its spring is on the right. And the way that you are going to take this apart is you're going to grab and hold firmly this section of the spring, and then you're going to rotate this section here, this metal section here. You're going to rotate that, and you'll feel the teeth come disconnected. Now you'll see there's slots with a groove in there, and then on this side you'll see that those teeth. Now those teeth that are in here lock into these slots. Like that, and you feel it grab. Now, if you're going to take a pre-wind out, you're going to grab a hold of it, pull it apart, and then very carefully unwind it. And I would usually recommend, if the spring is too tight, I would recommend taking one full pre-wind out. And so it's kind of tricky, and you have to be careful that you don't let it slip out of your hands, because it will spin on you and it will tear your hands apart. And so this is for the right-hand spring. Now the left-hand spring has got the idle head over here on the left, but see, this thing just spins freely. The place where you actually do the pre-winds is in the back side of the spring. And so this is, it has no pre-winds in it, so if we're going to put pre-winds in it, we're just going to use that yellow line, and we're going to count how many pre-winds we're going to put in there. So I'm going to start here. There's 1. There's 2, so that's 2 pre-winds. If I want to add a half a turn or a quarter turn, even if you want to add a quarter turn, got to take it apart, rotate it a quarter turn, let it lock in place, and so you can see the offset from here to here. That's a quarter turn. If you need a half turn, you take it apart, rotate it another quarter turn, and now you can see here's that yellow line, here's the other line. So now I've got, if I'm counting, I've got 1, 2, looks like 2, 3 turns, 2.5 turns on this spring. And so depending on how tight it is, how tight your shade is, and you almost have to experiment with how many pre-winds you're going to put in or take out. After you get the pre-winds set to where you want them, you have to line these back up into the grooves of the tube, carefully slide the spring back in place, and notice that these plastic sleeves here also will line up for the grooves of the tube. Be careful that this plastic sleeve does not overlap this white collar here. If it does, when you're trying to shove this back into the tube, if that goes over that, it's going to make this fit really, really tight into the tube. So you want to make sure that this stays back behind that collar on both sides. There's one over here and there's one over here too. You don't want it going over that thing. You want to make sure it stays within that white collar. And so hopefully that helps. Good luck.